Hey guys, welcome back. It's Dave. Coming with you, coming at you with my weekly video here. There's a couple things I want to elaborate on here in this video. There's not a whole lot of new material or new factors. However, I do want to talk about a few questions that I got, one through email and one through the Discord, about the race rating from the video I put out last time. And the race rating again was this section here. I don't know how many of you guys have been dabbling in this particular grid now since I've added it with the grid that says with race rating. I did put them in the grid downloads. And I had mentioned that the race rating is based off of the target rating of the horse. And then we just look at how many lengths behind at the finish the horse was, and we add those lengths. So for example, this one horse, and I'm going to show you the past performances in a second. This is Mountaineer Race 8 for tonight. This one horse was had an 80 target rating, and he was out by 4 lengths at the finish. He finished 4 behind the leader, so I gave that race rating an 84. Now, as I mentioned in the last video, how valid that rating is to determine a rating for the particular race, I don't know. I mean, like I said before, I'm concerned about keeping things simple and being able to quick cap the races. I don't want to start adding things into this that's going to lengthen the amount of time, especially when I'm having success or when we're having some sort of success with the method and the models that we're doing at the time. So what I want to do is I want to look at a few things here. First of all, I want you to see that there is consistency with these ratings, okay? So if you look at this race here, this was like, and without checking the past performances, you guys can trust me on this. If you look at the 1 horse and the 10 horse, okay, they're both coming out of the same exact race as far as the pace line that I'm using here in the model. And this race, as you can see, was a -1, -3 race shape. Same thing here, -1, -3 race shape. Why am I showing that to you? I'm just showing that to you to just kind of show you that it was the same exact race without having to go back and look at the past performances. However, look at these 2 horses. They have 2 different target ratings. The 10 had a 78 and the 1 had an 80. But when it comes down to the race rating, both of those race ratings come out to an 84. So there is consistency with that particular method when looking at sprint races. Now this is a 6 furlong race or 5.5 furlong race, and you're going to find consistency there with the sprint races. Now the other question I got I got one through email and I got one through the comments section of the last video was, am I doing the same thing with routes? Well, I'm going to show you what the difference is with routes. There's a little bit of an issue there with the route races, and here's why. When we figure out target rating, we figure it out off of the 6 furlong mark. So let me just take you guys to a route real fast on this card. We'll go to race 5. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're figuring out target ratings off of the pace call for a route race. And what happens here is we have a 113 and 1, which is 26 off of a 108, which is a 74. And then we have to go and find how many lengths behind he was, because this here is not reflecting, this here is reflecting the 6 furlong mark. Not necessarily, I shouldn't say necessarily, it's not reflecting anything that has anything to do with the final. So his target rating would be a 25, 26, 27, 73. Now, if you use that same method and added 1 to that and made this race rating a 74, you may have another horse in the race that was in a different spot. Let's say this was the same exact race. It's not, but you might have another horse that was in a totally different spot at the pace call, the 6 furlongs. So his time is going to be different. So if he was further back at the pace call, his time would be, instead of being a 1, whatever that was, a 113 and 1, let's say his was a 114 flat. So a 114 flat would be a 70. And let's say he lost the rate, he was out by 8 lengths. So that'd be a 78. Now, when I go and I add the 1 to that 78, that'd be a 79. We'd have two different race ratings for that route race. Okay? If you're unclear what I'm saying, it's not necessarily a big deal. What I'm getting at is there's no consistency with the race rating when you're using that method off of the 6 furlong call. Now, how do you come up with a rating for a route race? What I would do is, and I necessarily haven't been worried about the race rating. I've been using the same method because it's still the ratings are very close. You know, an 84 and then an 82 for two horses that are in the same race. They're very close to one another for me to change it up right now, because all this is here, this race rating, is just one little factor that's averaged into the overall. So it might make a difference of a few points between a couple horses when it comes to this, but we're not looking at this race rating as a standalone factor. Okay? So that's why I'm not necessarily that concerned, but those who are, I would recommend coming up with a standard time, let's say for the mile races. A standard time, let's say, was a 132. And then you would just do the same thing. You would go 140 and 3, would be 8. That'd be 43. That'd be a 57, 58, or even make it a 130 or a 135. It doesn't matter. It's all relative as long as you're using the same exact standard. Okay, for example, with 5.5 furlong races, I use a 102 as a standard. 6 furlongs, so it's a 108. With a mile, now here's the problem. When you get into a race that's, let's say, a mile long, and you got this horse and you're getting a target rating off the final time, and then all of a sudden you come down to a horse, let's say, who hasn't run a mile in a while. He's been running all mile 16ths. Now you can't get a time off of that mile. Now you have to have a different standard for the final time, let's say a mile 70. And that's where it becomes skewed, because as I said before, if it's the same distance and you're using 132 or 135 or whatever you want to use, it's all relative. It's all relative until all of a sudden you're looking at another horse that's running at a different distance, and now you're using like a 140 as a standard, or 141, or whatever. Okay? So really what I'm trying to say is I haven't ironed out exactly how to come up with a race rating in the route races yet that's based on the same methodology that we're using to come up with these sprint races, okay? But if you look at another one here, this race right here, a 4 and a -5 race shape, was the same exact race as this here. The 8 horse and the 11 horse are coming out of the same exact race. And as you can see, again, it's a sprint race. The 80 is a target rating, 83 down here, but at the same time, the 83 rating is consistent. Okay? So I am going forward with using this method for sprint races. And for routes right now, again, I'm just using the same exact method off of the 6 furlong call, because it's not making much of a difference with the numbers here. And even more importantly, it's not making much of a difference as it factors in here, because this is the only factor, the overall, that the race rating and the target rating are even tied into whatsoever. And it's tied into this along with a lot of other factors, okay? We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the target rating 7, and the race rating 8. All 8 of those factors are tied into that overall category. So again, I'm not necessarily that concerned, but I did want to address those questions. Now, I do want to show you something real quick. Let me pause this. Okay, what I wanted to do was show you the last time I played Mountaineer, which was last week. First of all, I'm having a lot more success using the model on tracks that are more or less consistent with the intangibles I talked about before. I'm able to find races that are at today's distance, on today's surface, similar to today's class level. unlike yesterday at Del Mar. Yesterday I handicapped Del Mar, and thankfully I was away longer than I thought I was going to be at a Labor Day weekend party. I thought I was going to be home by 5, and the races went off at 4:30, and I didn't get home till like 7:30. But when I got home, I started looking at the results of like the 5 races that I missed and comparing them to my grids, and I was just like, all right, it's not even worth playing the rest of the card. I did put a few tries in, 50-cent tries in, just to, because of the work I put into all the races, but I wasn't really that sold on the card when I saw the results. And I saw the craziness, some of the numbers that were coming in, and I compared them in my grid. And I really, I relate that to the fact that at days like that at Del Mar, yesterday was Pacific Classic Day, you got shippers coming in from all over the place. You have horses that are running at 1 mile and 3/8, and their last 4 or 5 races have been at like a mile or even 1 mile and 16ths. But yet you do have some horses in the race that have run 1 mile 3/8, 1 mile and 1/4, 1.5 miles. You're mixing them all together, and now you're trying to get figures from 1 mile and 16th from one horse, and then you're trying to get figures from another horse you're using a pace line from 1 mile and, let's say, 3/8 or 1 mile and 1/4. Okay, they're not going to iron out very well. And then all of a sudden, the horse that's coming off the 1 mile and 1/4 is running away and winning the race, but yet your factors and your figures are so much lower on that horse because of, again, the length of distance. And I know there's ways around that, and again, but I want to stick to these factors. And I found out that the tracks like Mountaineer, Penn National, even Del Mar on just a normal day when the card has a lot of claiming races and allowance races and not loaded with the stakes races, because those stakes races, I think there's a lot of, you got to really dig into the breeding, the sires and the bloodlines, and trainer intent and everything like that, which I know a lot of people do, but I want to be able to continue to handicap a race in like 6-7 minutes and be able to move on to the next one and have an entire card of 8 races like I did here at Mountaineer done in an hour and a half, and not have to, spend half a day handicapping a card. But what I did want to show you is last time I handicapped Mountaineer, and I put these into Discord. Last week I had a great day, or a great night. I forget which night it was, but I started off in race 2, and I hit the 20-cent super for 231.80. And in that same exact race, I had a 50-cent try, spent $4.50 on, and I got 131.60 for that. And in that same sequence was the pick 4. I did play a $24 ticket, and I hit a very nice pick 4 for $1,122. And so again, I'm not boasting here. I'm just showing you that there's reason why I keep going back to the well as far as tracks like Mountaineer and Penn National and Charlestown at times, because you're seeing a lot of horses that are running at that circuit all the time. Sometimes you get some jumps from Mahoning Valley to Mountaineer, Charlestown to Mountaineer, but for the most part, Mountaineer horses are running at Mountaineer. 6 furlong horses are running 6 furlong races, or close to it, 6.5, 5.5, or so on. And you don't see a lot of turnback horses coming from 1 mile and 16th for the last 3 times out and now running at 6 furlongs. That's where the problem comes into play with this particular model, when you have to really reach back to maybe January of 24 to find the last time a particular horse ran at the distance or close to the distance that you're looking at today, to try to get adequate figures to compare to the rest of the runners. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my plays here, just so you guys can, if you want to write them down, screenshot, whatever. But there's races 1 and 2 for tonight. Mountaineer. There's 3 and 4. 5 and 6. And 7 and 8. And as usual, I am trying to beat some projected heavy favorites. in these races, because you know one of the names of the game is try to find value and be able to capitalize on that value when you can. So that's all I really had in mind tonight for this video. But I hope you guys got something out of it. If you did, the one other thing I want to add to this, I'm sorry. If you notice, I did add another grid here that I wanted to play around with. And what I'm calling it is I'm calling it a performance value. And the performance value is something. What I'm doing is I'm basing it off the target rating and the race rating. And this is really a question I'm throwing out there to anybody who might have an idea, especially the statistical people, of comparing the target rating to the race rating to determine the value of that horse's particular performance that day. And here's the thing. My original thought was just take it as a percentage. Well, 80 is what percent of 84? 80 is what percent of 83? Like, for example, you'd have an 85-85. That would be a 100% performance value. The problem arises when you have a 82-85, which comes out to, let's say, a 96. And then you have another horse that ran in a race, let's say, that had a 77 race rating, and he ran a 77, he would get 100% performance value. Where this horse actually ran a little bit better. He ran at a higher race rating, a race with a higher race rating,
and a low of 52 degrees.
And also, you know, his target rating was actually higher, but yet his performance value would be lower. So that's what I was doing on some of these grids that I was playing around with here. You throw a target rating, and let's say that this horse's target rating was an 85. Let's say it was a sprint race, and he had an 85, and he was 5 lengths out at the finish, so that would be a 90 for the race rating. Come on, work with me here. There we go. Giving that a 94.44 performance value. Now all of a sudden you have a 3-horse coming out of a race with he had a target rating of a 73. And let's say he won the race. That stays as a 73. Now he has a performance value of 100, which is 5.56% higher than the horse that's obviously ran in a more competitive race based on the method that we're using for race rating, and a horse with a 12-point higher target rating. So I do not like this idea for performance value. But knowing how I do the factors, if there's anybody out there who has any thoughts on how we might be able to incorporate a performance value, throw your thoughts in the comments, throw them in the Discord. You can email me, thoroughcapping@gmail.com, and we can throw some ideas back and forth. All right, talk to you soon.